Let's call this meeting to order and get this party started. It is 1:01, Max. Do you want to do the roll call?
I think Max, you're muted.
Scott McCallum is present. Nadira Broom.
Present.
Vivian Carlisle Smith.
Here.
Laurel Hudson.
Present.
Dr. Labrum. I'm afraid Dr. Labrum's not here yet. Lillian is absent today.
Okay, hopefully Dr. Labrum will be joining us. First item on here, really the second, but is the approval of the minutes. I should probably check if we have a quorum. Oh, Dr. Labrum, I see, is coming on to the Zoom right now. Welcome, Dr. Labrum. All right, with that, I guess, do we have a quorum, Max? I think we do.
Yes, we do. We have a quorum.
Wonderful. So looking for a motion here about the minutes.
Vivian motions to accept the minutes as written.
Thank you, Vivian. Is there a second out there?
This is Nadira, I second.
Thank you, Nadir. We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as written. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Minutes are passed. We will do an audience introduction. Looks like we have at least one or two members in our audience, so let's do introductions now.
So welcome, everybody. First, I'd like to introduce Dacia Johnson, our Executive Director. Secondly, Angel Hell, Director of Vocational Rehabilitation Services. Kat Martin is our Chief Financial and Information Officer. Melinda Carlson is our Director of Independent Living Services. Jonathan Scrimenti, Manager of the Business Relations. I get that right? Who have I missed? Clay France, our Internal Auditor. Jim Portillo, who's a new member of our team, Director of this center, Orientation and Career Center for the Blind. Michael Wolf is also here, our Business Operations Manager. I think did I get everyone?
Ron Stewart.
Ron Stewart's also new, our new Business Enterprise. Would members of the audience like to introduce themselves?
Well, I'll just mention myself.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Randy Hout, and I'm being joined in to listen in. Thank you.
Welcome, Randy.
I'm Pete Pandy. I'm a facilitator. I've had a chance to talk with you before, and we're going to be talking today later about the strategic plan. So I'm here to facilitate that portion of the meeting.
Great. Welcome, Pete.
Thanks.
Anyone else? Okay, hearing none, let's move into public comment. Is there any public comment? Okay.
Hey, Scott, I'm sorry I had trouble getting off of mute. This is Randy Hout, elected committee chair of the Business Enterprise Consumer Committee. And I just want to share my excitement and the excitement of the vendors across Oregon with the hiring of Mr. Ron Stewart. I believe, and most of us all believe so far, Ron to be a genuine, caring, compassionate individual who has the best intent of the program and is willing to have open dialogue on easy subjects, hard subjects for the betterment of the program. So just want to welcome Ron.
Thank you very much for that welcome, Randy. Appreciate it. And welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, we are zooming along this Friday. Then we will move into the executive director report. Daisha, take it away.
Good afternoon, commissioners, and happy new year. This is our first meeting of 2024. It happens to be Groundhog Day. And of course, since we're going to be Puxatawny Phil predicted an early spring, the leaf blowers are outside preparing. So if you hear the noise, I apologize. We will go ahead and start with our CFO, Kat Martin, presenting the donations and financial report.
Good afternoon, Chair McCallum, commissioners, and thank you, Daisha. Rather than jumping right into those two reports, I'm going to give you some fun numbers since it is Groundhog Day. Those of you that know the movie may not know how long Bill Murray's character had to live in Puxatawny before he turned into a decent human being and got to move beyond February 2nd. So I'm here with that metric for you because I do report out on the numbers. It was 33 years and 10 months. Moving on to our financials, turning to the bequest and donations fund statement, our cash balance in the fund declined $1,753 to $290,495 on December 31st, 2023. As a cost savings measure to reduce our general fund obligation, the legislature directed the commission to use a portion of donations to match the salary or expense of one transition counselor. That obligation was once again carried forward to the 23-25 biennium, and with $18,000 of donated funds expended through December 31st towards it, the unobligated donations balance after this adjustment is $258,732. Referencing the financial status report next, between the budget and end of session bills, the commission was approved for $27,820,809, 66 positions, and 66.0 full-time equivalents during 23-25. Between both bills, the commission has $7,829,000 general fund, 1.1 million other funds, and 18.9 million in federal fund limitation to operate with over the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2025. Based upon 6 months of activity as of December 31st, a variance to our legislatively adopted budget is projected for the end of the biennium with general fund fully utilized, other fund under the approved limitation by $444,000 or 39.2%, and federal funding under the approved limitation by $1 million or 5.6%. Total variance is projected to be $1.5 million or 5.4%, where the approved budget again is $27,820,000 and projected expenditures $26,329,000. The commission is tracking budget requests submitted for the 2024 short session, which gets underway on Monday, February 5th, next Monday. The first request moved funds from IT professional services to personal services while increasing the agency headcount by 1 to bring IT help desk support into the commission. With the cost savings realized from this request, the commission submitted a second request, which includes finalization of classification changes for 2 positions approved for inclusion by DAS Chief Human Resources Office and a partial fix towards a technical correction in how indirect personnel have been budgeted. The partial fix will address budgetary pressure on the agency's general fund allotment for 23-25. Daisha and I are optimistic that our request will make it into the omnibus bill and will, of course, keep the commissioners apprised of developments on this front as the legislative session proceeds. That ends my report. Is there any questions I can answer for anyone?
Any questions for Kat? All right, not hearing any. Thank you very much, Kat. And
course.
it is interesting factoids about the Groundhog Day movie.
Hey, I report on numbers that make people's eyes cross, but I think that's a pretty interesting number. So
That's
just thought I'd
great.
have a little fun today.
I love that. All right. Well, the next item, commissioners, I just wanted to give an opportunity to allow you to engage with our new members of the leadership team. And I will start at the BECC Chair Hout's direction with introducing to you and welcoming Ron Stewart, who is the director of the agency's business enterprise program. Ron's been here since mid-December, and he really has hit the ground running and is really a natural collaborator, super enthusiastic with a lot of food service expertise. We're excited to have him on board. And Ron, would you like to address the commission?
Sure. Good afternoon. Glad to be here. Nice to meet everybody. And I'm really looking forward to working together in the future.
Welcome, Ron.
Thank you.
And then in addition to Ron, Jim Portillo, who started in the middle of the ice storm 2024. Jim has been with us for a couple of weeks now, and he comes to us. We stole him from the Washington State Services for the Blind Orientation and Career Center in their agency. He was the lead teacher there for many years, and we're super excited to have him as our director of the Orientation and Career Center for the Blind. Jim, would you like to say hello?
Sure. Hello, everyone. It's good to be here, and I'm really excited to be working with such a great team as well.
Very good. And you will certainly be hearing from both Ron and Jim in the future, so we're excited to have them on board. All right, moving on, I wanted to just briefly provide you with a federal update. In December was a very actionable month, December of 23. We actually received a confirmation of Dante Allen, who, if you will recall, we've been tracking his Senate confirmation for some time. He was recommended for confirmation and nominated twice in two different congressional sessions, but he made it through when they did a rush of confirmation at the end of 2023. So he has already started. I had an opportunity to be on one meeting with him. He is certainly somebody that's interested in making an impact during his term as RSA commissioner. So that is exciting news to have that position finally filled. And then the other point of interest that I just wanted to point out to you that we've actually been asked to host at her request, the Office of Special Education and Rehabilitation Services, which is the acronym is called OSERS. The Assistant Secretary, Glenna Gallo, who was previously a special education director in Washington State and Utah State. She is going to be here next week for a brief coffee meeting with myself and the agency, General Agency Director Keith Ozels, as well as the Special Education Director for the Oregon Department of Education. So we're looking forward to hosting her early next week, and we are looking forward to hopefully a conversation about how she can help us move our policy priorities forward here in this state of Oregon. Any questions about that? All right, moving on. Kat mentioned that the 2024 legislative session will kick off on Monday of next week on February 5th. If you will recall, by constitution, we have what's called a short session and a long session. Short sessions take place in the even years. So they have 35 days by constitution to get things completed, their work completed. So their constitutional sine die is the 10th of March, which I think is a Sunday when I looked. So they will be in for a very brief session. There will be a flurry of bill activity with some very tight deadlines, including that omnibus bill or that big agency budget finance bill that will make its way through the process during the month of February and into early March. So it is not a big substantive policy session for us. If you've been reading the headlines, there is a push for housing to finish the governor's priorities around housing. And then there's some additional legislative fixes they want to do with previous passed bill measure 110, as well as some behavioral health investments that they're looking at. Any questions about the session coming up? All right, not hearing any. The next item that we just wanted to address, just to keep you informed of our progress, is around the summer work experience program for this coming summer. And Angel wanted to just briefly address you and just provide you with an update on where she is in terms of preparation and planning for the summer of SWEP.
Yes.
Angel.
Absolutely. Good afternoon, commissioners. Well, I am excited to say that we are in the month that all of our applications are due for folks that want to participate in our summer work experience program. We have several that are underway. We're still working with students to figure out who is going to be able to and interested and able to attend our Portland residential SWEP program. As you know, Salem is on pause. We are in very active engagement with our regional programs to be looking towards staffing for 2025 and beyond. We're really hoping to get our residential SWEP Salem program back up and running. In the meantime, we are, as I have mentioned before, we are looking at students who would have traditionally gone to Salem SWEP and those who want to work in our communities. We are looking at our community-based, our third track SWEP for all of those students. And we are actively looking for our coaches even now for those areas of the state where students are and where they want to have community-based work experiences. Our most condensed populations are almost always Salem and Portland, and this year is going to be no different, but we do have some interest in folks that are in some more rural areas of the state that we are hoping we're going to be able to get some solid coaches. I am also excited to share that I just met with Northwest Association of Blind Athletes yesterday, and we are talking about, of course, programming for Portland SWEP as we always do, but we're also looking at scheduling programming with them for our community-based work experiences, particularly as it relates to students that would traditionally have come to the Salem program. So we're looking at activities that we can do with the Portland program, as well as potentially one or two activities that we can do throughout the program to bring just those students together so that they can have some in-person time with each other and learn from each other, and also looking for ways that we can throughout the program reinforce skills like techniques for daily living, orientation and mobility, all of those things based on resources of course. But we are excited about the summer. We've got some students that are very excited about the prospects of the kinds of jobs that we're looking at for them. And we are on track for Portland and community-based SWEP. Any questions for me in understanding that we are in kind of the preliminary stages of planning right now?
Angel, this is Scott. I'm curious about the conversations with regional programs. How are those going? Are they participating, and anything I can do to support you?
Oh, thank you. So with our closest partners, which would be Portland Public Schools and Northwest Regional, we feel very strong. We've had a couple of meetings. I'm meeting regularly with Scott Wall, and we have been collaborating. They've been really wonderful about also helping to do outreach to the other regional programs. We are in process of meeting with a couple of more regional programs. I've met with Willamette. We're going to be meeting with Central Oregon and Lynn Benton coming up. So they're all underway at this moment, varying degrees of interest in TVIs working in the summers, we might imagine, but our biggest lift and our biggest excitement will be if we can get inroads either under contract or some other methodology for working with Willamette ESD, because they're the ones that are actually right in the location where Salem SWEP would be at Willamette University. So we're still working on that one, but we did recently meet with them, and we're at least hopeful for some progress in that area. I will let you know, Scott, if there's any additional help you can provide. I think right now we're just trying to gently prod in the direction of getting TBI involvement and O&M certified people who work with our population. And that's what we're looking for. So.
Okay, sounds good. I'm happy to have a reason to call some old friends if you need it. So let me know.
All right, I will probably be taking you up on that.
I hope you do.
Great.
Thank you, Angel.
Great. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any other questions for her on SWEP? All right, and then the final item, Mr. Chair, I just wanted to confirm for you, as we anticipated, we did receive our engagement letter from the Secretary of State Audits Division on the anticipated federal compliance audit for the vocational rehabilitation program. As you will recall, this is an every 3-year, what we would like to call a wellness check, where they do under the Single Audit Act, they audit the Federal Vocational Rehabilitation Award. So they review our books and our programming in accordance to the guidance that Rehabilitation Services Administration has distributed. So they will be auditing our sister agency, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitation, as well as ours. And they anticipate that they will wrap up their field work sometime in March. So I'm not certain if they will have their formal kind of wrap up information by your upcoming board meeting in April. But if not, for sure, we will be presenting the information to you at your June meeting, if not earlier. I will note also that it is for the period of July 1 of 2022 through June 30th of 2023. So that's the period that they will be reviewing. And that was, it's been a few years. It seems like not 3 years ago. It seems shorter than that. But they are keeping their every 3-year schedule again this year. And it's very helpful for us. I should also mention that this is a process that is very quick and very targeted, and it gives us really good feedback around how our internal controls are working. And if there are any material issues that we need to address, we're given an opportunity to address that over time. So super, super helpful process, and we look forward to working with them, and then, of course, having it wrapped up and finished. Questions about the federal compliance audit? How'd I do, Clay? Did I do okay? I get all the deets? Good. Got a thumbs up from Clay. All right, Mr. Chair, I believe that concludes my report.
Thank you, Daisha. We will move into old business. We've got the comprehensive statewide needs assessment for the vocational rehabilitation programs. I'm guessing that's you, Angel.
That would be me. Yes. Good afternoon again, commissioners. So talking about 3 years, you're going to catch a theme here. Every 3 years, we also conduct our own comprehensive statewide needs assessment. And that is specific to the vocational rehabilitation program. So that's important to note that this is specific just to that program in particular. It really is another wellness check, actually, for us to see how we're doing in terms of meeting the needs of our and underserved populations, and it is required by the Rehabilitation Services Administration. So that is something that is a compliance area, but it also is something that we really care about. We want to know how we're doing in terms of services to clients. So as some of you or all of you would know, we actually did interview and survey and have focus groups with a multitude of folks around the CSNA. And I will tell you, we had an internal person, our operations and policy analyst, Cassie Richard, took lead, and this is the first time we've actually had an internal staff take lead on this process. And she did an amazing job. It's a big body of work. You all have a copy of it. It is over 150 pages, so this is going to be a very high-level review, but I did want to at least let you know what it's comprised of and how we got the information, and then you can go through and look at whatever level of detail you would like to look at. You do also have a summary that was included with the CSNA that you can read if you just want to get the kind of brief digest rather than reading this large body of work. So we interviewed and surveyed staff and board members, so you were a part of the process. Current and past participants, so clients, job developers, and vendors of complementary services that we secure or that are provided out in the community, including workforce partners. So we have a lot of information that folks have provided, most of which are not necessarily a surprise to us, but they are things that we want to keep in mind and that will drive our focus for things like training of staff and also the ways that we provide information to clients. So, so this obviously for un and underserved, we want to make sure that we're highlighting several areas. These are compliance areas, but they're also key areas for us in terms of the clients that we serve. So we're talking about minorities that are un or underserved, or that's been served by the workforce, other partners in the workforce. We're talking about youth who experience disabilities. So we did have a captive audience over the summer, in particular with our SWEP students. So we did do sessions with them and made sure that we're focusing on what they need in terms of pre-employment transition services, which is 15% of the VR budget is to be spent on those services. And so those are the primary areas, and of course our supported employment population or people who experience multiple disabilities or barriers to work. So in order to encapsulate this data, we did also look at American Community Survey, for example, US Census data, Cornell statistics, our own internal data from our case management system, that is from our 9/11s, which are quarterly reports that we submit to the Rehabilitation Services Administration, or RSA. And as mentioned, we did the surveys, we interviewed a bunch of different groups within our internal staff, not just counselors, but business relations coordinators, our own transition and employment first officer who oversaw that area. We're recruiting for that position right now, and other staff members. So we have a very robust representation of the people that we gathered information from. And one of the things that I wanted to just highlight is that there are some areas that I mentioned that are going to be resulting in us focusing on some training areas, but also just reinforcing the things we're doing well, which is a really helpful part of the report. So reinforcing the importance of individualized services is something that we heard as a theme, is really allowing participants to move at their own pace and really looking at their needs, and a self-paced model is something that we heard resounding. We absolutely are committed to that. We do that both in our field services and in our training center services. About half of our constituents say that they're still using virtual services. So the implementation of the things that we started over COVID, or that we ramped up significantly during COVID, are things that we are still committed to doing. And we know in particular that is highly impactful for our rural clients who aren't able to get to our services, or that are spread out throughout the state, and it's hard for us to get to them as regularly. One of the things that we see as an opportunity is that participants share that they feel like they don't always know the full breadth of information and services that the agency can provide them. We do feel like from talking to counselors about their intakes that it does feel like a bit of a fire hose for clients when they're coming in. Counselors are sharing our services, but we want to look for ways to maybe more in intervals be able to share internal and external resources and the things that are available to clients rather than up front when clients are really overwhelmed. It feels like they're not able to take that all in. And so looking for ways to enhance our, maybe websites and other intervals of engagement and education for our clients as they're going through the rehabilitation process. Both participants and staff talked about the need for more training for diversity, equity, inclusion. We're doing a lot of that, but we want to continue to do that. And we're hearing that has a high impact on our staff's ability to engage with all of our populations. And of course, an area that continually comes up for us is working with clients with multiple barriers to employment or other disabilities outside of blindness. And we are very cognizant of this. We are looking at opportunities regularly for engaging with experts in the fields of within blindness, but also external to blindness or co-occurring disabilities. So these are things we're putting on our 2024 schedule for training even now. And the other thing that we have noted is that, there is a high need for business engagement and educating our employers throughout the state on working with people who experience blindness and other disabilities. And so that's something that we're going to continue to do. And we're very passionate about. We are a dual customer approach from the VR side of things. And we believe strongly in not just educating and training our clients, but educating and training and supporting our employers throughout the state. And we also wanted to underline the importance of career exploration and labor market information as we're working with clients throughout the rehabilitation process. So looking for more ways to infuse that into not just vocational rehabilitation exploration with counselors, but also throughout our training and within the training center in the field and our assistive technology. And so we did note that, of course, we provide pretty high levels of service to our minority populations, but they often do not receive the amount of services that other participants are receiving. And we don't know, one thing we're looking at is why is it that they are just not interested in the level of services, including, college and other forms of exploration and training, or is it that for some reason they're not getting the equitable access? We don't know because these are very small, and that is an important thing to say throughout this. We have a very small population, so the sample sizes are pretty low in terms of those who participated in the process. However, it is important, and we want to really get at that. So that is something we're going to be digging into a little bit more in terms of the data. It is also interesting to note that the employment rate is the same amongst minority status individuals as it is amongst the rest of the population as we did our compare and contrast. So that was just an interesting thing to note. And let's see. So yeah, and I think the unique barriers to people who are in our rural areas of the state was not a surprise. Transportation is a big obstacle, which is why the virtual services are so important to them. So we want to continue to reinforce our ability to provide those services virtually, and also helping to see where we can to impact the ability for them to get transportation to the places that they need to go for their rehabilitation. And of course, we will continue to go to them through our field services as well. Yeah, and I think the final thing I wanted to note is that we again were looking for ways to support our supported employment population. That is an area that we just continue to know. I've already mentioned the training, but also just resources job developers and resources that are out in the community, we find that they are very limited the more rural we get in the state. And so continuing to try to work to develop our CRPs, which are our community resource providers, which include job developers in those areas of the state. It's difficult and we can't create them, but any chance we get to educate people that are working, for instance, with the vocational rehabilitation services, our general agency, we're always looking to coordinate and sometimes steal, but usually co-manage cases. When we have job developers working for them, we may co-manage those cases in order to provide services or look to educate them and bring them into our vendor resources. And then the big barrier that our youth noted was that just the education of employers in hiring and retaining individuals who experience blindness. And so that is something we're continuing to focus on. And of course, it is a big component of what we do with SWEP. Because by getting our employers exposure to that population, as you all know, it gets them really excited about the prospect of engaging with our population, both youth and adults, and only enhances our ability then to be able to place people throughout the year, not just in the summer for SWEP. So I think that is the summary that I am able to provide at this moment. Again, there is a lot in the comprehensive statewide needs assessment, so please feel free to dig in. And if there are things that come up for you as you're looking at that or ideas you have, we're very open to hearing those. So please reach out if there is anything that you can share with us that would be helpful in providing exemplary services to our clients who experience vision loss throughout Oregon. So any questions? A lot.
Well, you gave us a lot of information there, Angel. I appreciate it. And I would encourage all of the commissioners to read the report when you get a chance. I'll be reading it on the plane on my way to Mexico this weekend. So,
on the way to Mexico, what a great read for you.
Right?
Well, I'll love to hear your feedback, Scott, and anybody else who has anything to provide. It's a big lift, and we're excited to operationalize the feedback that we've gotten.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Commissioners, any questions for Angel? Okay, hearing none, we will move into new business. Agency contracts review. Clay, take it away.
Good afternoon, commissioners. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. I would like to spend just a couple of minutes and give you an overview of a contracts review that I recently completed. As you may recall, I wouldn't expect you to, but you may. This was included in the 2023 internal audit plan that I reviewed with you last year. So it's one chunk of work from that plan that has been completed. When we say contracts, we are talking about professional services contracts, and these are vendors that are helping our clients with things such as orientation and mobility skills, adaptive communication skills, computer technology, career exploration, things like that. There were 3 objectives of this review. The first being to determine if each vendor file contained evidence that a thorough vetting and approval process was performed. The second being determining if there was an adequate segregation of duties between who reviewed the potential vendor's qualifications and who approved and signed the contract. And lastly, determining if each vendor contract met the federal, state, and agency requirements and was properly completed, approved, and supported with the required documentation. The scope of the review, I reviewed all vendor contracts that were active during the period of the audit, which was 44 contracts, and reviewed the supporting documentation for each. I also reviewed the approval process checklists. These are checklists we use for approving new vendor relationships. I reviewed these for all new vendor relationships between January 2019 and June 2023 for a total of 12 vendors. the results overall, I believe we have an adequate segregation of duties between who reviews each potential vendor's qualifications and who approves and signs the contract. So that's good. The majority of the current contracts were fully completed and properly approved. It wouldn't be a successful review if I didn't identify a few areas for improvement. These included the approval process checklists, which are the checklists we use for approving new vendors, were not being consistently completed and approved as required by our internal procedures. Another area, we perform background checks on key persons, and the key persons typically include the vendor and then anyone that works with the vendor who works directly with our clients. So we perform background checks on these individuals. While all of the background checks were accounted for, we did not always show evidence of reviewing the background check or that they were consistently pulled when a contract was renewed. Another area, we identified that we were not using the most recent contract template. The Department of Administrative Services provides the template that is to be used, and they update it occasionally, and we had just missed one of those updates. The next area, the federal government requires that for each vendor, we do a search of the sam.gov website, which helps to ensure that that vendor has not been debarred or suspended by the federal government. So we have been consistently performing these. We just have not been consistently either saving a copy of it or evidencing on a copy that it was reviewed. This as required by an internal process. And then lastly, when we renew a vendor relationship, we use a checklist to make sure that all the items are accounted for, and these were not always being completed as required by internal procedure. As part of the review, I provided recommendations for improvement in each of these areas, and I think it's important to note that the majority of these areas were all tied to internal processes where we were just kind of missing in the mark slightly on an internal process. And then lastly, the VR program included a response, and that's in the memo that you received, and they agree with the findings, and they are taking steps already to strengthen these areas and ensure the documentation is detailed and accurate. And I'm confident that they will do such. That is a high-level overview. I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
When will you do the next audit of contracts?
We included some hours in this year's internal audit plan to go back and do a checkup, just to make sure that the corrective action plans have been implemented.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And are working.
Yeah. And in addition, and Angel, feel free to correct me here, the VR program is implementing a quarterly review of the contracts just to make sure that these areas and all the other areas are being performed correctly. Any other questions?
Any questions, commissioners?
This is Nadira.
You got it, dear.
Yes. Kind of a silly question, but
Yeah.
Are the background checks a one and done, or do vendors have to or do you do background checks like every year, every couple of years?
Yeah, that's a good question. They are not one and done. We do a background check initially before the final approval of the vendor and their key persons. And then when the contract is renewed, we do a background check again.
This is Scott. Is there a requirement then that those vendors who have successfully made it through that background checks, that if anything ever does come up where they do something, do they have to report it to you?
Oh, that is a good question. Angel, are you familiar with that process?
That is a great point, Scott. I think I'll have to look at our contract to see if there's language in there about that. It may be something that we want to build in. I'm not confident that we have language like that. With the state of Oregon, we use their template, so that may be in there and buried in the legalese. I will take a look though. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Scott. That was kind of what I was like, what if
they did something in the
Yeah.
meantime, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, good point.
We do have a process in place that if the vendor adds an additional key person, that requires a modification to the contract, and we would do a background check before we approved to add that key person to the contract.
Any other questions, commissioners?
Vivian,
You got it.
it's just a quick question. Those checklists that in some cases were not being followed completely, is it like from a lot of different people, or is it consistently certain people?
Good question. This process is pretty, how would you say it? It's typically one person, maybe two at the most, that are doing this work, and they're doing it together, basically. So what we've done is they were very proactive, and part of the reason the checklists weren't being fully completed is they weren't always applicable, or it wasn't a current process. So the checklists have been revamped, and I feel we have a stronger tool now to use, and I think there will definitely be more eyes on it. We've strengthened the process so that there are eyes on the complete to ensure that the checklist has been completed before it moves to the next step.
I think the other piece where this is so helpful for us, just chiming in, this is Daisha, is that we started out with a very manual, paper-driven checklist process, and then everyone in the pandemic went remote. So we were basically retrofitting a paperless process on a very paper dependent system to checklists, and now we've automated that. So it's a perfect example of how automation just is going to be helpful to us to be able to drive it. It's going to be fully accessible for the reviewers as they're signing contracts. It's just going to make it better. But without the internal capacity to check on the health of some of our systems, you're just making assumptions that these processes you put in place are working until you check them, and there was some system failures that we were able to address. So we committed, commissioners, to with the increase of having the capacity for internal audits, that we would report to you when we are doing well, and we would report to you when we fell short of our internal expectations. And this is an example of our commitment to keeping that. And it's our way of letting you know that we'll never be perfect, but we are going to try to keep our systems healthy and in place, and let you know when we're doing that work in real time.
Appreciate that, Clay. I also think when you say eyes on, I know you're using an expression, and you mean attention's going to be paid to those details. I think we all know in this group that eyes on doesn't mean anything. You don't necessarily need that.
Good point. Thank you.
Anything else, commissioners? Okay, moving forward, we've got our vocational rehabilitation state plan for 24-27. This is an action item, and Jonathan, I think you will be talking to us about this, and then we will need a motion afterwards.
Thank you, Board Chair. Well, good afternoon, commissioners. Thank you for taking time to consider approval of our state plan. Last week, Max sent out an executive summary along with the full text, if you care to reference. This document falls under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, which directs state agencies to work as a cohesive unit related to workforce and talent development. So as you might suspect, there are a number of different agencies that all contribute to the plan, but for today's purposes, we'll just focus on reviewing the OCB portion. The state plan that we're reviewing today addresses future program years 2024 to 2027 and is the third full state plan that we're submitting. There was a modification submitted in 2022, which focused on updates related to COVID and its impact on the agency's service delivery. The content of the state plan is fairly set by federal regulation. So if you read something that might not seem like it belongs in a certain section, this was not an exercise in creative writing. It's just because we received feedback in previous years that the federal reviewers would like to see that certain topic addressed where it was. You'll notice that the CSNA is referenced many times and heavily influenced the state plan. So I'll review each section again in high level, but feel free to interrupt or save your questions to the end. I'm fine either way. The very first section is titled State Rehabilitation Council and reviews the organizational structure and that we are governed by an independent commission. So much of that section is not applicable to OCB. The second section really begins more of the meat of the document and reviews different sections of the CSNA. We talk about the population statistics of Oregon. We reference the American Community Survey, which estimates the prevalence of vision difficulties of Oregon's population, which came in at about 7.8%, and that represents 99,996 Oregonians over the age of 16. For reference, the Oregon Commission for the Blind has provided services for 613 unduplicated individuals in program year 20, 649 in program year 21, and 681 in program year 22. So given that the state is estimating a 0.6% population increase over the next year, we've put forth that the agency will probably serve an additional 20 or so clients. In terms of demographics, the population of clients that OCB serves mirrors the percentage of racial demographics in the state overall. And while I do think that we should note this is a milestone because in the past we've had some gaps, we also do want to acknowledge that Oregon does have a history of systemic racism. So there's still work to be done in this area while making sure that we remain culturally sensitive to how different cultures respond to disabilities, including vision loss. The CSNA suggests that 10% of clients had been connected to a WorkSource Oregon office. We know that this is an area that needs both strategic and tactical intervention. We'd love to see that number a bit higher. WorkSource Oregon offices are located throughout the state and offer a suite of career services that complement job developers, job coaches. They also offer local labor market information and job connections. So again, this is a resource that could be greater promoted. Within the CSNA section, we also were asked to address services as they relate to youth. One recommendation that we put forward in the state plan that's in line with WIOA is to engage students a little earlier. We hear clients want to learn more about OCB services earlier in their adolescence, young adulthood, just to get them ready to engage with transition age services. We do intend on continuing to focus on collaboration with schools/regional programs while building on the momentum of the agency's ongoing work in this area, including our Treasured Sweat program. The next major section of the state plan is goals, priorities, and strategies. There are 4 goals that we put forward, and the plan itself goes into operationalizing those. The first goal is successfully implementing the intent of WIOA. The second goal is increasing agency outreach and effectiveness of services. Third goal is enhancing and maintaining OCB capacity and expertise in serving Oregonians who experience blindness and vision loss. And the fourth goal is to increase the capacity of Oregon's businesses to hire, retain Oregonians who experience vision loss. The agency feels that this is a good balance between internal operations, client services, and business engagement. These are really the 3 key stakeholders, if we think about employees as our internal operations, that will most likely increase our ability to work towards those WIOA related outcomes. The next section is evaluation and reports of progress related to VR and supported employment goals. We reviewed our 4 goals from the previous submission, and these goals were intentionally structured to be more open-ended, more lofty, I guess you could say more mission-oriented in nature, so they could be long-term. We didn't want to write narrow goals, short-term goals, maybe smart-term goals, nothing like that, because those would change and just be done all of a sudden every 3 or 4 years. We believe that the goals that we've provided in previous state plans and this one would provide some continuity and consistency. We do, for each goal, provide examples of how the agency is working toward executing those goals. And many examples that we've provided in the state plan highlight our dual customer approach to serving both clients and employers. The next section, which is annual estimates, required the agency to forecast federal spending for the next federal fiscal year. Again, we just made that calculation based on the state's population growth forecast. The next 2 sections did not apply, but we did have to submit a narrative explaining why they didn't apply. So I am skipping over order of selection along with waiver of state wideness. The next section of the state plan asks the agency to detail a comprehensive system of personnel development. We review the relationships that OCB has with universities in the area, such as Portland State and Western Oregon, which we consider important partners and pipelines for both VRCs and instructors. We address professional development for employees, such as the biannual all-staff training, monthly counselor training, and a monthly O&M training, which we just started this year with Dr. Rosen. The last 3 sections, and this is the final 3 sections, address partnerships with educational systems, employers, and other agencies. We have active information sharing agreements and coordinated planning between OCB and regional school district programs, the Office of Vocational Rehabilitational Services, the Department of Education, and healthcare organizations throughout the state. Let's see here. We also address our commitment to progressive employment activities, which serve the need of both businesses and clients. We review our partnerships with the National Employment Team and how our own BRCs have presented at national conferences. Last but not least, we have agreements or partnerships with the Public Utility Commission, the NFB of Oregon, ACB of Oregon, NWABA, and various chambers of commerce, because we believe these relationships can help maximize placement opportunities in one way or another for our clients. So the current status of the state plan is that it is in public comment through the rest of the month. We'll have then a week or 2 to make revisions based on public comment. The state as a whole submits the state plan to the feds, who then provide their own feedback and revisions. We go ahead and implement those, and then it goes to the governor's office for review. So in summary, WIOA requires agencies to focus on serving both clients and employers. And while we have identified a few areas for improvement in the state plan, OCB actively embodies the spirit of WIOA and making sure this is reflected in continuous improvement for the outcomes of our clients.
So we're, Dacia, correct me if I'm wrong, or Jonathan, correct me if I'm wrong here. We're looking for board approval of this plan. And so if this would be a great time to ask any questions, express any concerns, and or suggest a motion to approve. Or not, if you don't want to.
Okay, well, if there are no questions, this is Nadira. I move to approve.
Thank you, Nadir. We have a motion to approve the 2024-27 Vocational Rehabilitation State Plan. Do I have a second for that?
I second that.
This is Laurel, and I second that.
All right, we've got 2 seconds from Dr. Labrum and Laurel Hudson. Thank you both. So we'll vote now. All in favor of approving the plan as presented to us, please say aye.
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 I figured you approve it there, Nadir, since you offered the motion. Any opposed? I think I heard from everybody. All right, motion carries. It's approved. Thank you, folks. We will now move into Part C of new business, agency service delivery overview. We're going to get presentations from a number of folks before we move into the strategic plan work that we had started before. I think, Angel, you're kicking it off with the voc rehabbing.
I am. Did you guys miss me?
We always miss you.
Hope you don't get tired of me by the end of the day. I am excited to talk about the vocational rehabilitation program. And so we're going to start with the purpose of our vocational rehabilitation program, which is to, of course, provide exemplary vocational rehabilitation services to our clients and employers throughout the state of Oregon. And then I want to talk a little bit about just service delivery. So of course, just our vocational staff, so our highly qualified vocational rehabilitation counselors take all of our clients from referral, whatever source that may be. Could be clients, it could be doctors, eye doctors, all the way from that first step of them coming into our doors into ultimately service delivery. So we're getting them into individual plans for employment and then into service delivery. And that's where all the magic happens in vocational rehabilitation. So all of the services that get provided at that point are going to be our training center staff, our field staff that are both doing independent living and vocational rehabilitation, as well as our vendors throughout the state that vocational rehabilitation counselors are coordinating as our multidisciplinary team. So we're having clients work with internal and external folks to get them ultimately into their goal for employment. So some of which might include having them go through certification or college experiences, and then into their hopefully their dream jobs or their stepping stone jobs as they move into their future. One of the things that we know is that not all clients are ready for this particular step in their rehabilitation process. So, as you are looking at our data, there are clients that don't make it all the way through to the rehabilitation process, but we hope oftentimes they might go back into it, like, for example, our independent living program and get additional skills they may need so that they can continue thinking about what might be possible for them. And then they may re-engage in the rehabilitation process. But our ultimate goal is that they get employed and that they stay employed, which is some of the measures that we pay attention to. So not just once a client closes, but what happens to them after they gain employment. If they have stayed employed at the second and fourth quarter after exit, for example, is something that we track. But our joy, what brings us the most joy at, I think, OCB as a whole, and as of course, as from a counselor's perspective, is that we can get them into the jobs that they're looking for and keep them retained. In that light, we do serve employers throughout Oregon, and we are regularly providing trainings, so disability awareness kinds of training, and making sure that employers also have access to our assistive technology staff in order to make their workplaces exemplary and allow them to be able to provide the kinds of supports that our clients may need in order to be effective in their workplaces. So we also work with our employment workforce partners throughout the state and under the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act. And that is a really exciting thing that we have, I think, since 2014, been really working hard. We have people that are providing services in our workforce offices that are OCB staff. So we do co-location in multiple areas of the state. And they also do co-training of clients and other partners alongside us. And of course, our whole goal is then to be able to create additional teams around our clients for them to obtain the outcomes that we're looking for independent living and employment opportunities. And I also like to highlight that part of our service delivery is this retention piece, and also making sure that we're getting for example, measurable skill gains and the kinds of things that we want to make sure clients are getting throughout their vocational rehabilitation process. So it is not just those staff that are working directly with clients that are helping make sure that we're providing those services, but our operation and policy analysts, our program analysts, and our admin specialists all are critical, as well as our human service assistants, in making sure that we're tracking the things that we need to be tracking from a federal level, but also that impact our clients' ability to move forward in their vocational rehabilitation process. So it is a whole OCB team, from the accounting back of the house to the front of the house, that supports the vocational process. So one of the things we also want to talk about is just some challenges that we might be facing in vocational rehabilitation. So one of the things that we do see, and I think I've mentioned in this context in prior presentations, is we do know that lots of clients come to us with not just vocational needs, but social service needs, foundational needs for them to just be able to be stable and then be able to think about employment. So we are constantly looking for resources and opportunities to build that in, because our vocational staff are so very focused and really are intended to be focused on those vocational goals. And so that is an area that we do find challenge. Outreach and education, just as we mentioned from the CSNA, opportunities to do more of that. But staff have a lot of other things on their docket, and so looking for opportunities to increase our outreach and also just really ongoing needs for limited duration and internship opportunities that help us with our succession planning. And then also, as noted in the CSNA, opportunities for more vigorous, more intensive training around clients who come with multiple barriers to employment. So one of we also want to highlight some of the program areas that we're excited to share. We did have, we had 559 just regular VR clients and 85 potentially eligible plus pre-ETS clients that were served in our last federal fiscal year 23. So 644 total clients that were served in that last federal fiscal year. Number of employment outcomes was 61. And our average income for successfully closed clients for hourly income was $23.04 an hour. So not too shabby for well above minimum wage. And so we're going to look at program years for these, because for measurable skill gains, that is more relevant. For program year 21, we were at 35%. And in 2022 program year, we were at 60.2%. So we doubled our measurable skill gains, which is something that RSA is looking at, and we've been working very diligently to both provide to clients and to track. We had a 15% increase in the number of referrals in the last federal fiscal year, a 16% increase in applications, and a 31% increase in the number of individual plans for employment that were developed in that year. And I just wanted to highlight real quick a few of the jobs. I know you guys like to hear, like, where did people get employed? So we had athletic trainers, we had bookkeeping and accounting, cashiers, community and social service specialists, dispatchers, including police, elementary school teachers, general operation managers, massage therapists, mental health counselors, administrative support workers, psychologists, just to name a few. We had a lot of a variety of placements throughout the year, and we're very excited to be able to share this with you today.
Angel, this is Scott. I have a real quick question.
Yeah.
How does the voc rehab process work when you mentioned someone they became a teacher?
Yes.
Well, I became a teacher, and then I wanted to be an administrator, and then I wanted to be a superintendent. How does vocational rehabilitation engage with that process of upward mobility? Because often the first job those people or anybody gets is not really their dream job. It might be the dream job in the moment, but then they realize there's so much more. How does that?
Yeah. That is such a great question, Scott. We absolutely believe in career development. And so that is why you will see that clients that work with us often will come back and work with us again after they've, so for example, after someone gets their bachelor's degree, we do request in almost all situations, there are a few exceptions that they go go to work for at least a year before they think about moving into their master's. Just as they're building their resume, that's something we feel is really important. So we may have clients that do that, where they go into one career path, they get experience, and then they want to move into a master's degree that will help them elevate their career. We definitely see that. And we also have clients that do, they work in a field for a while, and then they realize that, you know, from exposure to other areas of career development, they want to get exposure to other things. They come back and they may get additional training with us, additional schooling, certifications, and then we place them there and they come back, you know, again, and we are able to help them. Some of them don't need our help because, you know, they've already got all the tools in their toolkit and they have the income they need to just create their own career path. But as they need that help and want that help from OCB, we are here all along their career path for anything that they might need.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Vivian, yes.
How long, can you provide services?
For example, say you have a client and they end up getting their bachelor's degree, say, let's say technology, but they also have maybe another disability along with blindness, and after the bachelor's degree, they get a job, but they only have one client, say. How long is that person allowed to stay in the voc rehab program? I mean, can you go up to like 20, 30 years, or is there a time limit?
So, great question, Vivian. There is no time limit. We generally are looking at an average of around 3 years, you know, as you're talking about people getting vocational orientation and mobility skills, techniques of daily living, and those kinds of things. So we would traditionally not want to see someone be open, you know, 10, 15, 20 years. We want that to be a very incremental process in their life. So again, if they are able to be employed, we want to make sure they're secure in employment. And then hopefully close them and let them live their lives and do that work, and then come back if they're ready for additional opportunities. So, but there's no set time limit.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the question.
Is there an age limit for the vocational rehab program?
There is a lower level, so we can serve as early as 14, and then there is no upward limit. So anybody who wants to work, they can be as old as any age above 14. We are able and interested in working on.
If someone would like to pursue, say, a master's or other higher education, does OCB provide some funding help?
We absolutely can, if it's agreed upon in their individual plan for employment. Again, if we're working with them towards their bachelor's, we do, in most professions, we do ask that they get at least a year of work experience between the bachelor's and master's program. But absolutely, we support master's level education.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. All right, I think that concludes vocational rehabilitation.
Thanks, Angel. Melinda, I think you are up with independent living.
I am. Good afternoon, Chair, Commissioners, guests, my colleagues. This is my favorite day of the year because I get to talk about my program with the board. So the purpose of the independent living team is to serve people that are not on a vocational track. About 75% of our clients are over the age of 75. And we worked with 1,047 clients in the federal fiscal year 23. We have one grant that provides funding for people that are 55 and over, and then a very small grant that provides funding for people that are under the age of 55. I kind of like to think of us as the little engine that could at OCB, because we have very little funding, but we get a lot accomplished. The majority of the lessons that we provide with our clients are in their homes, where they can be directly related to the environments that they're living in. In 2023, we had 8 instructors, and we averaged about 3,000 lessons a year, just to give you a little taste of the fact that they are out on the road, driving from home to home 5 days a week. I'm happy to report, and I'll talk about this again during our celebrations, but we had 8 positions last year, and we've added a 9th this year. We do have 1 vacancy in Eugene at this time. Some of our challenges are reaching all Oregonians. We really believe that there are probably a lot of people out there, especially in the older individuals who are blind category, that just don't know about us. So we spend a lot of time, and as a matter of fact, in a couple of weeks, we're going to be at the Oregon Academy of Ophthalmologists, and their conference also has a meeting of the Oregon ophthalmology assistants, where we can go and really talk to them about the services we provide and encourage them to refer clients to us. I know that when I started, we had as low as 17% of our referrals coming from eye care providers, and we have maintained about 30% in the last couple of years. So we're happy with that. Another challenge is providing timely service. Angel mentioned the increases in referrals and applications and plans. We also experienced that. We had a 24% increase in referrals from federal fiscal year 22 to 23. It went from 990 people to 1,230. Adding that 9th position was very helpful to us, because one of the areas that's growing incredibly is the Deschutes County with Bend and Redmond. And by having an extra instructor in Pendleton, that whole eastern side of Portland now has 2 people that can do all that driving and work with our clients. We're challenged in Portland, especially seeing that increase in referrals and having 3 people try to sort through all those referrals that are coming in. Recruiting and retention, I would be remiss if I didn't mention this. Always having a hard time. O&Ms are the primary base for our rehab instructors, and it is difficult to find O&Ms right now. If you have any nieces or nephews or grandchildren or children, recommend they go into that, as they will have work wherever they want, anywhere in the world. So we are working on some new recruiting strategies, and I think it was Jonathan that mentioned that we are working closely with Portland State, as well as all of the universities that have programs related to vision services. I want to talk a little bit about think it was Jonathan also, that mentioned career development and being able to allow our employees to go to conferences to maintain their certifications, but also as a retention bonus or benefit. So we do pay for AER certifications for all of our staff in the IL department and encourage them to go to conferences. Finding the funding to do that is always a challenge. We're very excited that in March, the Pacific Northwest, or I think it's the Northwest AER, is going to be in Washington. And so I'm hoping to send a contingency from the IL team to that. But that career development really plays in two important roles. It helps our clients or our staff get their continuing education units, but it's also a real benefit to them in the ever-changing world we live in of technology. Funding is another challenge. We are getting, our federal grants are very small. I did divide out the numbers, and we are serving our under 55 clients for about each client, about $1,179 is spent per client, and about $1,300 per client on our older blind. And was it Vivian who asked, can somebody be in VR for 20 years? I'm going to just cut to the chase and say in our program, it's probably closer to 4 to 6 months per client. Celebration wise, we are really happy that we are seeing more referrals come in, even though now we're finding that bottleneck of resources to be instructor time. We are happy that we added 3 new employees to the IL department in federal fiscal year 23. And I hope I can tell you that another one's coming for our Eugene position. You can say a little prayer for us. And then we are very grateful to find the gentleman that's working for us in Pendleton. We weren't really looking for someone, but he applied for the Redmond job, and we had 2, not Redmond, Medford. We had 2 people apply that were both wonderful, and we were able to hire that Pendleton position in a limited duration. So we are hoping for some funding to make him a permanent position. And then we add, I think that's the majority. Any questions I can answer for you?
This is Alan.
Hi.
Hi. How long is the O&M program to become an O&M instructor?
It is 2 years. You do have to have your bachelor's for the Portland State program.
Thank you.
Most of them are 2 years. I actually don't know if there's any undergraduate programs in O&M. There may be, but
there's one out of Texas Tech. There might be one other one. I've had limited experience with the people coming out of that program. I'm perhaps a little bit thinking that the master's degree may bring us better success.
If this soup thing doesn't work out, I'm in O&M. I'll come work for you.
We'll do everything we can to make that happen.
Well, thanks.
This is Nadira.
Yes, hi Nadira.
Hi, Melinda. So with regard to letting people know about your services, so I volunteer with Meals on Wheels people, and I have told a few people, like 3 people over the past few months, who are experiencing vision loss about the program. Do you have a relationship? Does the program have a relationship with Meals on Wheels people?
That's a great idea. Right now, we do not have a partnership with Meals on Wheels. And what I didn't mention is because of all those referrals that are coming in, my teachers are so busy that they are really not able to do a lot of outreach.
Yeah.
But I love the idea, and maybe we could even get some literature to them, or offer to do a presentation for them. You know, that's something
Yeah.
I could do.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your attention, everyone.
Thanks, Melinda. Up next, we have the Orientation and Career Center for the Blind. Jonathan, I think that's you.
It is me. Good afternoon, commissioners, again. I appreciate you taking your time to review some program level updates for the Orientation and Career Center for the Blind, also called the Training Center. I wish it was more ceremonious that I hand off the baton or the hat to Jim. Maybe we'll have to think about that in the future. But I'm happy to provide this update on his behalf since I'm exiting that role. So the Training Center exists as part of the VR program. And in terms of process and context, as VRCs are the counselors, meet with clients and identify needs, this is where the Training Center steps in. And I almost like to think about it as a gap analysis. So we take a assessment of the client's current skills, we think about where they want to be in the future, and then that gap there, how do we identify what they need to get to that future goal, that employment goal, the educational goal, that gap there, that's where the Training Center comes in. We're that bridge. We focus on delivery of content-specific training, but also problem-solving skills that they can take home, and they don't have to call OCB just for this little thing. We've given them the tools to problem solve independently. So in terms of our services, they mostly center around classroom instruction. Many of our lessons are one-on-one, although there are some classes that are groups, such as technology, Braille, keyboarding, living with blindness. That's our adjustment to sight loss seminar. Classes such as O&M, woodshop, some technology are mostly offered one-on-one due to safety or just the individual nature of the curriculum. It makes more sense for individualized instruction. Most of our instruction has been 75% in person. That is a statistic that we've talked about before in our annual program updates. That's remained constant for a while now, the past couple quarters. I kind of foresee that holding true, given that we all have a bias for that in-person learning. We know in general it works better for our clients when that can happen. But for the 25% or so that are remote, that's mostly due to work schedules or needing to attend class from outside the Portland metro area. So we do also want to make sure that we are serving those clients now that we have those abilities. The instructors who deliver services are highly specialized. We do have our O&Ms have their master's degrees. The tech instructors have certificates in the various software areas that they're teaching. Of the 11 full-time and part-time instructors in the center, 10 of the 11 have some varying degree of vision loss. And what I think makes that lived experience so valuable is that spirit that the instructors can bring to the table, and they can say something along the lines of, look, my friend, you know, I've been where you are. I've walked that journey. We're going to do it together, but you got to pull yourself up and we're going to get that done. You know, that just really seems to make a big difference for our clients when they can see someone who's done this, they've walked that path, or they're currently walking it. That can't be, yeah, I just don't want to underestimate that importance. While the Training Center is 99.99% rosy, we do have our challenges as well. I didn't know that Melinda was going to say staff recruitment, but we have that as well. Certainly, we are competing nationally for talent. You know, instructors can potentially make more money with school districts, have their summers off. That sounds great. We are compensating as well in the Training Center with professional development. We bring in expert trainers related to adult learning, ADHD, brain injuries, just to name a few topics, so instructors feel like they are growing as well in their positions. Student attendance is an area that we are monitoring regularly and taking action on. Sometimes clients commit to a little bit more than they can take on, or healthcare issues arise. And so we will talk to the student, talk to the counselor, and see if it's appropriate to pause training or maybe slot someone else in for a few weeks. But again, student attendance, something that we're constantly working on as well. In terms of numbers, we served 150 unique clients in the most recent federal fiscal year. On average, clients spent about 9 months in the training center if they're taking a full load of classes. There are some clients, again, who are working, or maybe they only need one class or can only take one class at a time, for example, due to childcare. So that just does prolong their tenure a little bit. On average, for a quarter, we've got about 80 or 90 students enrolled in the training center. So I'll wrap up with celebrations, and I am not going to bury the lead here. The most important thing, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is absolutely student learning. Every quarter, we measure progress against the curriculum, and in general, our clients are making statistically significant gains in their learning. What this means for us is that they're just moving closer and closer to being job ready. And it goes back to that sense of mission fulfillment, and how do we get to blindness without barriers? And I fully believe that the training center, that team is demonstrating that mission. In the past year, we've also intentionally increased the number of group classes. That was not a top-down management decision to say, you all must be more efficient, teach group classes. I'm actually really happy to say that the teachers wanted to do that. It was really a concerted effort on their part to make sure that peer-to-peer learning is happening. But we also believe that it facilitates a spirit of we're all in this together. It breaks down isolation. We regularly hear about friendships that are formed in the training center, and they're carried out into students' personal lives. So while we won't be measuring friendships in the training center anytime soon, I do believe that it's a natural byproduct of a training center that is being run correctly. So with that, I am happy to take questions or further dive into anything that the center is doing.
This is Nadira. What, how big are the group classes?
Yeah, good question. So keyboarding for anywhere from 6 to 10. 10 being on the very high side, but that could be possible for keyboarding because students are mostly working individual and the instructor is just facilitating. When students are learning an iPhone for the first time, for example, maybe 4 students would be appropriate.
Okay. Is there still a physical class, an exercise class? Back when I was there, they had stamina, but I know that
There is. We have recently rebranded it. The instructor this. We call it mindful movement, and
okay.
it's as in the past. It's kind of a combination of yoga and stamina. But again, the mindful movement piece just reflects on how movement is meant to be intentional, and really support the goals of orientation and mobility.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is Alan again. So do the VRCs help identify the goals or even career goals? Or yes, okay, not just the gap, but the goals too. Okay, great, yeah, because a lot of my patients they don't know how to ask for help because they don't know what they can do in terms of a career. So.
Yes, I would say the counselors work in conjunction with the client and the instructors to help not only ultimately set the goal or reset goals, as the case may be in some cases, but also to do that gap analysis and make sure that we're meeting the needs as a whole team.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just comment or just credit you all with stealing Jim away from Washington. That was a good hire. I DSB probably hated losing him, but nice job. Any other comments, questions, commissioners? If not, we'll move into the final part of this agenda item with Ron. You get to tell us about the BEP.
All right. Good afternoon, commissioners. So the purpose of the Business Enterprise Program is to provide for-profit business management opportunities for Oregonians who are legally blind, while also providing customers with high-quality food service and vending programs. Recruit and train new vending facility managers. We select, train, and license qualified individuals, provide continuing education opportunities to all licensed individuals, and ensure licensees comply with federal and state agreements. We partner with federal, state, and other municipal agencies, gather data on new facilities being built or acquired, survey locations for new opportunities, establish locations and negotiate agreements, and manage the agreements. We provide support to vending facility managers, or VFMs, provide ongoing maintenance to established facilities, inspect and evaluate all facilities annually, and process monthly financial information, including billing and collection of required fees. We educate and implement program rules. We implement the Randolph-Shepard Act and Code of Federal Regulations, implement Oregon revised statutes. Some of the challenges we've had are our building populations are still way down since COVID. We're re-envisioning program rebuilding with out-of-the-box thinking, some fresh ideas. So trying to get those revenues up and grow the program in new ways. Little overview of the program performance for federal fiscal year 23. We had 14 VFMs participated in the program. Gross sales were $2,757,000, which was a 32% increase from the previous federal fiscal year. Vendor earnings were $668,985, which is a 63% increase. And the average VFM earnings was $44,838, which was a 64% increase from the previous federal fiscal year. Some things I'm happy to say, we've got 2 VFMs that received their Business Enterprise Program licenses in 2023, and we've got 2 trainees that are currently working towards their licensure. Thank you.
Any questions for Ron or comments?
Vivian,
Go for it.
did you say there was 14 managers?
Yes.
Oh, I thought we had 17. My mistake then, okay.
I think that's a good question, Vivian. We had a couple of retirements recently, and
Oh, okay.
so yeah, so I think it is one of those numbers that won't be fixed in time. It will ebb and flow. But it is
Oh,
a
yeah, yeah.
low number. Yeah.
I hadn't heard about retirement, so I was just curious. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Are there any new sites, I guess, that we have in the BEP program that folks are serving?
That's a good question. Daisha, do you know if there's any new sites?
We had one location that was close to materializing in the fall, and they decided to go into a different direction. That was on the coast, Camp Rylea. And so that's the closest one that we have gotten to acquiring. But we're hopeful that we can, with Ron's leadership, kind of reinvigorate and rethink some of our potential business strategies that will expand some of the facilities. I think one of the things that happened during the pandemic is that we actually had to contract as folks retired. We combined facilities to keep them profitable and keep people in living wages. So we actually have fewer facilities now, and it's really a good opportunity for us under Ron's leadership to think about creative ways to expand the program and grow it again. Good question.
Any other questions or comments, commissioners? Okay, hearing none. Thanks, Ron. Appreciate it and welcome.
Yep.
Okay, next thing on the agenda is the strategic plan development. That's with Pete, and we've been sitting here now in meetings for quite a while. I think it might be appropriate here to take a 5-minute break. Does that work for everybody? All right, we'll take a 5-minute break. It's 2:40. Come back at 2:45.
Thank you.
No problem.
Form the financial investments that we want to make to the agency. As a reminder, we have a biennial budget process, which is kind of tracking how we're spending on the current biennium. It's a 2-year budget that started July 1st of 2023 and goes through June 30th of 2025. And believe it or not, we geared up actually in December the initiation of the budget development process for the 25-27 biennium. So as we kind of do the strategic planning process, those priorities will help the agency consider your direction in making recommendations back to you around potential suggested investments that we may want to request in the governor's process. This cycle, the governor has rethought how the agency budget development process happens. And so we will be actually doing more of a parallel track with budget development this time. In essence, we will be working more closely with the governor's office and our chief financial office analyst as we're creating our agency request budget. So instead of having a more of an agency request budget that happens at the agency level under your leadership, and then it gets informs the governor's budget, it will be more of a collaborative process that leads up to the agency budget, which will develop into the governor's budget. We're really excited about that process. It's new to us. And so at this point, as we're kind of formulating the early stages of the themes that we're seeing, it really is based on what you heard from the program directors. You know, looking at things, for example, around the unprecedented increase in demand for those older blind independent living services around the state, and trying to think about what is our role in trying to make sure and of how many Oregonians we want to serve in this really critical program that we think is really cost effective, and it helps reduce the costs of other social service programs. If seniors can stay independent in their homes, it feels like the right thing to do for Oregonians, but it's also very cost effective because they don't access higher levels of care. But really trying to tee up that conversation in a way that really informs that budgeting process. In order for us to serve more Oregonians, we would need more capacity, obviously. The other element around that you've heard, that theme woven throughout all the program directors, is our service delivery system is solely dependent on very qualified master's level clinicians in the specialized fields that they do, in counseling and teaching and the various disciplines in that teaching. And so our plans really has to think about the service delivery at the same time, that succession planning lens, to really think about how do we not only recruit the best people who want to work for our agency, but once they get here, how do we keep them here? How do we keep them engaged in the work and committed to staying at OCB? Because as Melinda articulated, they really have the choice to, with the right credentials, work in any industry in any state that has these specific disciplines. And it is a good career occupation if you do have folks who like to work in all elements outdoors and like to work with people. Orientation mobility is a good demand occupation. You heard about our business enterprise program and really where we're at a pivotal moment where we're wanting to say, how do we rethink how to make these entrepreneurs who are blind profitable, and leveraging the public building space and the customers, and and the post-pandemic kind of remote work world to try to make these profitable businesses and meeting the changing needs of customers. You know, some of the things we've been kind of toying around in our ideas is instead of relying on people for lunch traffic, maybe we have, you know, where they can grab a dinner to go and take it home and do heat and serve kind of thing. So just rethinking some of those strategies to use the facilities that we have in new and different ways. Looking at information technology, we've had information technology investments, but really it's around keeping our infrastructure in place that is in alignment with the state expectations, but with our case management system, creating the right customizations and automizations that make the counselors and teachers' jobs less about the paperwork and process and more about the people. And then, you know, with the advent of some exciting different types of technology that might be able to streamline some of the research that happens on the regulations and the rules, and trying to think outside of the box around how can we automate some of those search needs for them to make sure that as they're making the policy decisions that they can reference the relevant policy and rules and guidelines and everything that they have to follow. So again, we're allowing those counselors and teachers to make good decisions, but the bulk of their time is really in that service delivery mode. You know, thinking about the employment and the careers piece, as Angel kind of described, and we're interested in helping individuals get to the jobs piece, but we're also trying to explore ways that we might be able to focus on the retention side, because it's important that people are able to get those jobs and careers of their choosing. But we want to make sure that as our lives, sometimes they're more complex and our social needs and social service needs are there, that we have the right types of services and supports available to help people keep those jobs once they secure them. And then the area of pre-employment transition services, we've talked quite a bit over the last several meetings around the summer work experience program and how to resource that to provide the best services possible, and what the appropriate types of infrastructure that we may need to rethink and reconsider within the agency in order to make that happen. And then the final element that we recognize is that under this new administration that Governor Kotek has put together in her vision for the state of Oregon, she expects certain standards across the agency that we'll need to really evaluate whether or not our existing infrastructure is sufficient in order to meet those expectations. So as we're kind of contemplating the overall priorities and resource needs for the agency, we'll need to think not only on the service side, but the administrative side to make sure that we have sufficient balance to support all of the operational needs and to be able to execute at the level that the governor is expecting for agencies. That's kind of my thoughts at this point. Any questions about the budgeting process as we kind of think about our priorities moving forward?
Okay. Thank you, Dacia. So what we're going to do now, as I mentioned, and you heard in the agenda, is talk about first of all, the pestle analysis that we had done, and then you received a draft. You went through and added other items to that. And so the objective now is just to make sure everybody has in their mind what are some of the elements or the issues and trends under each of those areas. And then we're going to go through each of the current priorities and get your thoughts. So I think really right now what we're asking you to think about is, what are we maybe missing? What are things that maybe we have put emphasis on but need to transition and kind of leave that as a lower priority for now? And then what are our new areas, and what are things that we need to continue with maybe some adjustment, but continue to move forward on. I think one of the biggest challenges of any plan of any kind, and a strategic plan in particular, is it's easy to come up with a long list of things that, sounds great and is very ambitious and exciting, but, as has been very clear as we've been talking today, resources are limited. It's, finding good people, all those things that you have to deal with. So it is important to be somewhat disciplined in saying, of all these, great things we'd like to do, these are the things that we really want to emphasize, and not, let your eyes be too big, bigger than your stomach, or your hands be bigger than your stomach, or, however you're interpreting things. So the question, I guess, is just to see, would it be helpful to just read through the items that were on the pestle, or do you know enough, you have it in your heads enough already that you don't need to spend the time walking through that again? I'm just, I guess the question is, who would like to hear on the board, would like to hear, and the commissioners, a recap of the pestle, so we don't spend time if it's useful, but not if it's not. So if you don't say, I want to hear it again, that means you feel you've got enough of an understanding of what those elements are that we walked through in the pestle. All right, seeing none of the commissioners asking to do that, I'm going to consider the pestle complete. You've got enough of it in your head that we can now move on to really the main part of this, which is to go through the current priorities and elements under each priority and get your thoughts. And so what I wanted to do is take these one at a time. I'll talk about the overall and then each of the items under that. If you want to hear, okay, what was that about? Then I can read the whole text, but I'm going to try to be, again, judicious time-wise. But what we then want to have is a discussion on each of the priorities, and really the phrase we use is stop, start, continue. Okay, do we need to stop doing anything here? Do we want to start doing anything new? Do we want to continue? So that's really what we're looking at. So the first priority is service equity. And the three major elements under service equity are statewide access, which really means the access to OCB services throughout the state based on location, capability, etc. Inclusive service delivery that similar, but also adds in criteria like race, age, gender, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, and then technology accessibility. And that a lot of what's talked about there has to do with broadband capability and access that people may or may not have, which, it's the not have that we have a problem with. So comments, concerns, questions, suggestions from commissioners on this whole topic of service equity. Is it still a priority? Are there things we should be de-emphasizing, re-emphasizing, so forth? I'm going to open it up to, I'm not going to go through a roll call. I'm going to let you have to speak up. Okay, so if you have something to say, don't be shy.
This is Scott. As a service organization, it feels important to continue those goals, or that priority of service equity and all that means. Feels appropriate to me.
Mm-hmm. Are there any specific areas that any of you think, this is the one or two things that kind of stand out that we really should be concentrating on in that arena of service equity? Or anything you'd like me to review, just to remind you what's under that title?
If you don't mind, Mr. Chair, I will just say one of the things that we are noticing is that there is an increase in kind of agency commitment to a higher level of accessibility of systems, programs, access. That does seem to have improved since our plan was developed. For example, we had a couple of folks from the employment department here to really learn about accessibility and think about their programs and access. And that was something that is just, they came to our end of term lunch celebration, our most recent one, which was great to just, and they were just like wanting to learn and find out about us. So that's something that, you know, we can't ask for everything, but it may be something that we may want to rethink and look at differently, because agencies are getting the resources to focus on that, and they're doing that without our kind of oversight or involvement.
Yeah, I actually had that experience working with the Board of Pharmacy, where they are looking at, you know, their own website and also languages as well, and making sure that it's accessible in a way I'm not sure they thought of before. I do think the diversity, equity, and inclusion theme, you know, people are realizing there are, you know, inclusion includes blind people, right? So it's not just race and gender, it's physical capabilities as well. And actually that comes up a little bit in a later section as well. So if there are no comments, I'm going to move on. The next strategic priority is on aging Oregonians. The two areas here are on aging citizens, which is a lot of it to do with the ability to stay and work in your residence, who can, you know, people who can have access to education and support. So seniors who experience vision loss can live safely and independently. And then there's the broader demographic of the aging workforce, and how can OCB support all the skills that broader population is running into as they run into vision loss. So again, questions on it, or areas where you think, you know, I'm not sure we're doing enough here, or maybe we should focus on a certain area under the category of aging.
This is Scott again. I do wish we could do more. This is a huge population of folks. I think, Melinda, you said it's 75% of the group served or something, but and I regularly get calls from folks, and they want to go to my school, and they're like 80 years old, you know, and that's not obviously what we exist for. But I know that a lot of folks who experience vision loss later in life, they don't have the skills right away, you know, and they don't know where to get it. And if the commission doesn't provide it, I worry about their quality of life and their happiness.
Mm-hmm. Other comments?
I will also note, I also understand that you're very under-resourced for that population. I wish that both the federal and state government would make it more of a focus, because those folks deserve the support too.
Yeah, I agree, and I still think it's important, the strategic priority.
Okay. All right, good. One of the things, you know, just as a comment that I've talked about with Daisha is, you know, when we're doing a strategic plan, we're building on what you've already done, and you don't necessarily need to make a sharp left or right turn. If, you know, we're on the right track, we don't want to like change just for the sake of change. So the fact that we're not, you know, coming up with something brand spanking new is not necessarily a bad thing. It means we're on the right track and we need to keep moving forward. I think some of the themes about resources and accessibility, you know, there might be some things from an action point of view that staff can suggest, because we're taking your input and then going to feed back, okay, here's recommendations for what the new plan should look like. So with that in mind, if there's nothing else on people aging, then we'll move into specialized staff and overall workforce trends. So we've heard about this already, the challenge of recruitment, the anticipated expansion of, dismal labor market hasn't happened, which I guess is a good news, but it means it's hard to find people. The job market is competitive, and obviously, as everybody has said, we're looking for people with really important skills and capabilities that are pretty unique. So there's basically two elements to this. There's recruitment, which is finding the people, and then retaining them, retention. So those continue to be, those are elements of the plan now. And the question is, any changes or ideas to add to that in the updated plan?
This is Scott again. I think it's extraordinarily important. I don't think as a state agency, we're ever going to be we're never going to outpay Portland Public for their orientation mobility specialists. We have to find other ways to invest in our staff, whether it's going to Pacific Northwest AER or paying for their comms evaluations that are expensive I think it's 5 years. I mean, all these different elements, we have to find different ways to invest in them. While agencies like OCB are wonderful to work for and people can buy into the mission, the salary just doesn't, it's not competitive. And I don't think it's ever going to be the top of the pay scale. So there are other ways you can invest in staff. And if the state would invest in that more for the OCB, I think you'd have a better shot.
Well, hopefully
I second that.
Yeah, it's a challenge that most state agencies and government agencies have. You look for people who have a public service commitment, and they're the folks who come into this kind of role who might be able to make more money doing something else. One question I had, hope this isn't out of step, but is it possible to bring resources into your services on part-time basis? Someone who has expertise and capability, not ready to sign on to be a full-time employee, but could, I don't know if it'd be voluntary or some, part-time contribution. Has that ever been looked into, or are there reasons why you can't do it?
That's a great question. We have one of the options with the contracts that we discussed earlier is we have an ongoing solicitation, an open application for folks who have the qualifications to do this work on a contractual basis.
Mm-hmm.
It is, so that's one alternative. Part-time work is a little bit harder in state structure. It's not impossible, but there are certain guidelines that we would have to follow. But contract work for sure is an option if folks are willing to go through the kind of the prerequisites and the hoops that are involved in setting up shop as a contractor.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry to interrupt. I have to go. I have patient care. Okay. Thank you for the meeting.
Pretty important.
Bye.
Bye, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dr. Labrum.
Thank you. Good. Okay. Any other comments on the workforce?
There's a way you could grow your own. I find that has been really beneficial for us at a state agency where we pay for people to go back to school to get their teacher credentials and their O&M credentials, and we pay for their AER memberships, and we pay for their comms. Like, it's what I got to do, but it keeps the folks at least willing to work here.
We do the same, and we may have stole your idea at some point, Scott. I can't remember, but we do the exact same thing whenever we can.
All right. So strategic priority 4, and this is the one that has a little bit of overlap to 1, is the access and opportunity. And I think this emphasizes a little bit more on the first item is outreach and public education, which is really how to make sure people know where to find us. Obviously, there's capacity issues, but are we visible? Are we accessible and known by the people who would need our services? And then it also mentions in this item 2 is state government, tied again to the Oregon Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Plan, where governments have an example to hire qualified job seekers. So this would be applying the education around to employers to state agencies so that they can be a model for the business community and other employers to hire blind people and show how they can really be valuable contributors. Third item is inclusive communications, so that particularly focuses on support for multilingual Oregonians and people with limited English proficiency, as well as English language learners having access to forms and documents through adaptive technology, etc. Business partnerships, so trying to work with businesses to promote inclusivity and recognizing that blind people, as it says, are simply hiring them is good for business. And then expanding opportunities for entrepreneurs, which is under the Business Enterprise Program. So that's that pretty broad category. Thoughts or ideas or direction or changes in direction on that topic?
Stay the course.
All right. And we're down to the last item, which is accountable government. So this has a lot to do with the operations of the organization. We have under this performance optimization, the performance management system is a priority within OCB and helps to ensure that the agency is doing the right thing in the right way. Obviously, information technology is a key, and trying to build, I think Deja talked about some of the infrastructure, or to make sure that it's evolving to be optimal. And then access to the information technology, which so we've also talked about a little bit already. Then last is collaboration and transparency, to help optimize the use of resources to meet the needs, which we've talked about a little bit already as well, to make sure the agency's work is conducted in an open way, policy decisions are follow public meeting rules, etc. So thoughts on the priority of accountable government?
Feel like
Continue
you're doing.
on.
Sorry, Vivian, go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't say my name. We need to continue this process being open and transparent on all levels.
Good. Other commissioner comments?
I agree.
All right. Well, those are the 5 strategic priorities. And I think what we've heard through all the conversation today is we don't see any major need for deviation or change. I do think part of what Dacia and the leadership team will need to do is then from these carve out specific objectives and actions that will be kind of here's our work plan to try to support these broad objectives, and to feed that back to you as part of the development of the plan. And I think we're hoping to get that for the next meeting. What's your timing? That's the next plan for the next meeting. So any other comments or questions? This has been pretty easy. So it you didn't test my facilitation skills a whole lot, but I guess I appreciate. Daisha, any other final comments or Commissioner McCallum, want to wrap this up?
I think you're on the right path, and there's a lot of work to do. So just keep moving forward, and we'll look for the updates at the next meeting.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you. I know you need to go into another part of the meeting now, so I'll sign off. Thank you, and hope to be connecting with you again in a few weeks.
Thank you, Pete. Have a nice week.
You too. Take care, buddy. Bye.
Bye, Pete.
All right, moving on, we've got an executive session. So pursuant to ORS 192.6602F to consider information and records exempt from public disclosure. We'll then reconvene the public meeting here for the Oregon Commission for the Blind on February 2nd. It is 3:28. Moving into our agenda here, Part 10, consideration of the final order on contested case OAH case number 2023-ABC-06035. This is an action item, and I'm looking for a motion, perhaps to authorize the executive director to sign this final order and serve Mr. Houth with that order.
Vivian, I so move.
Okay, thank you. The motion has been made. Do I have a second?
This is Nadira. I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Thank you, Nadira and Vivian. All in favor, say aye.
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 Nadira, did I hear from you? I just want to make sure.
Sorry, aye.
Okay, and that means there will be no opposed because that's all of us. So motion carries. Okay. With that, we're on part 11, adjournment. We can call this meeting to a close at 3:29 p.m. Happy Friday, everybody. Have a wonderful
Have a
week.
good weekend.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday, Mr. Chair.
Oh, thank you.
travel.
Happy birthday. Be
Happy
safe in
birthday.
Mexico.
Happy
birthday, Scott.
Happy
Thank you.
birthday.
That's why
Have a mark for me.
yes, I'm turning 50, so it's time to celebrate.
Yeah, buddy.
Yeah, buddy. Thanks, Vivian. Have a great weekend, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You all.
Take care, guys.
Bye-bye.